Welcome to the second screencast about installing and configuring SharePoint 2014 over SQL Server 2014 CPT1 in a single server. In the first part of this series, we install a new instance of SQL Server 2014 CPT1 for user application. We will now install a new SQL Server Database Engine instance to store the SharePoint databases. For this, we launch the SQL Server installation. And here we will select to perform a new installation. We will select the database engine services as we only need the database engine for SharePoint. We will create a new name instance. In this case, the name will be MOS, and we will change the default installation directory to the E drive. We will also change the default SQL Server account to the SQL Services account that we have created in the first part of this video, and change also the user directory folder to the E drive. After the installation is finished, we will connect to our new MOS instance and configure the maximum memory allowed by this instance. Remember that we are using a single server machine, so it's a good practice to set the maximum memory that each instance of SQL Server can use. For this, go to the instance properties, go to memory settings, and here you can change the maximum memory depending on how much memory you have in your server. Now we are ready to launch the installation of the SharePoint 2014 binary. So now we will install first the SharePoint prerequisites. So this is a faster way to, instead of installing each component one by one, we can select the SharePoint preparation tool. After we install all the prerequisites, we will finish the installation and restart the server. After the server finishes installing all the prerequisites, we will be ready to begin the main installation. Now it's complete. Launch the installation files again. And here we will select Install SharePoint Server. Enter your product key. Here in this screen you need to select the the complete server installation. The complete server installation will allow you to add more servers to your installation, and also will allow you to define your own SQL Server instance instead of using SQL Server Express. So this is better for scalability. You can, for example, have the SQL Server in one box and your SharePoint server in other box. So in that case, only the complete installation works. After the SharePoint installation has finished, you are ready now to configure SharePoint. This is the configuration wizard. We will select Connect, create a new server farm, because this is a new SharePoint installation. In this window, we need to enter all the information for our database server. Remember that we created a MOS instance to hold all our SharePoint databases. So here we will define and enter the instance name, and also we need to indicate which will be the user account that SharePoint will use to do all the installation, and this user account needs system administration permissions over the SQL Server instance. So we here are adding the user account that we have created for SharePoint installation, in this case the SP Farm Services, as a sys administration in our MOS SQL Server instance. The passphrase is the key that SharePoint will use to encrypt all our database information, so it's important to keep this passphrase in a safe place. We will change the default port number for the for the SharePoint Central Administration. We can use the ones provided by the wizard, but you can also change that. We change this in this case to 2013 for the Central Administration. And continue. After some time you will end the configuration, and the next step will be to browse your new installation of SharePoint. It will take some seconds or some minutes, depending on your server speed, until you go to the initial farm configuration. In this case, in SharePoint 2013, the configuration is browser based. So here we can continue creating our new SharePoint farm. We'll use the wizard. We will use a different account from the installation account. As you can see on services, by default the wizard pre-selects all existing SharePoint services. As our main focus is for BI solutions, we will remove some of them. While more services added in your installation, obviously you will need more resources to run this server. The next step will will ask about what is the default template that you want to use for the new website. In this case, we selected the business intelligence. Just complete the form configuration wizard. We hit finish, and this is the summary with all the several applications. So after that, you will be redirected to the central administration. This is the website where we configure all additional settings for SharePoint. We can take a look to the issues existing in this new installation, and you can see that this is regarding to the free space in our disk. So yes, we can be relaxed because this is a demo server. We can take a look to the default settings that this wizard has configured. You can see that there are two different SharePoint web applications: the central administration and the default web application. And also in the collection list there is only one, the root. And for service applications, here is where all our services have been configured. You can see the Excel services, Secure Store services, the Performance Point services, and VCO graphics service. Most of the configuration has been done for us, and if you want to use Performance Point Excel services with using unattended accounts, so this is a good way to use a default user account while accessing all our data. It's a good idea to configure the Secure Store service. The Secure Store service is a service where SharePoint can store some predefined accounts. So we go to the Secure Store service and create a new application, and here we'll create and generate a new key. After you have configured the Secure Store service, you can go back to the Performance Point services. And for all your services, you can create a new Secure Store service application. This will be the user account or the identity that Performance Point will use by default when credentials are not specified. So this is good, so we don't need to configure Kerberos in all our servers. Instead of that, we will use this unattended account by default by Performance Point. We can do the same for Excel services. Navigate to the Secure Store Service Association, and here we will enter the credential that we will use for unattended access for Excel services. And as you can see behind the scenes, this will create two new applications in the Secure Store service. You can see the PPS unattended account and the Excel services unattended account. For VCO graphics service, if you want to create some VCO services visualizations, And for business services, you will need to enter the application ID of the Secure Store service. So in this case, we have to manually create the Secure Store service application. So we can go back to the Secure Store service. And from here, we can create a new target application. So this application will be used by the VCR Store service. Remember that this is the unattended account that VCR will use when accessing data in the backend databases. We go back to the VCO graphic service application and enter the new application ID that we have created in the Secure Store service. So now we are ready with our new installation of SharePoint 2013. This installation has all the business intelligence services included, such as SharePoint and Performance Point services, Excel services, and Visio graphic services.